Welcome to Malaysia, Richard.
Thank you, thank you.
Is this your very first time here?
Good grief, no.
It's not, okay. When was the last time you were here?
I haven't been into Malaysia for a few years,
Okay.
but I think I first came here in the mid-1990s. I brought my mother to Malaysia, and the one thing that stands out from that very first visit was that you could take the luggage trolleys on the escalators. Don't ask me why, but I always seem to remember in the airport being able to do that. But since then, I've been once or twice, but I've never been on a full-scale trip like I am on this time for Business Traveller. I've been back many times to Southeast Asia, but it was interesting on this trip because I came via Hong Kong, and Hong Kong at the moment is experiencing some very cold weather. Now, it meant when I got off the plane in Hong Kong, I didn't feel like I was in Southeast Asia. I still had my coat, in Asia, it felt cold. It felt cold. But when I got off the plane here in KL, it felt like I was back in the region again. And there really is, I can tell you, and it doesn't matter whether it's here or whether it's in Singapore when you get off the plane or whether it's any of these parts of this world, there is a smell, there is a warmth, there is a humidity, there is a lushness of the vegetation that you just realise. There's a smell, I can't explain it. It's not a nasty smell, it's not a delightful smell, but the air feels different. And you've just flown 16 hours from New York or 12 hours from London, and you get off the plane and you are very much aware you are in a different geography, a different climate, a different culture, and it's something I relish.
Richard, you have a very distinct, unconventional voice. And I think someone even described your voice as gargling with broken glass. Have you ever felt insecure about your voice?
Oh, all the time. Of course. If somebody says to you, your voice sounds like you're gargling with broken glass, and you do often get people say, why do you shout, or why have you got this, or is this voice affected? Then you do have those moments of insecurity when you think, hang on, do they not like me? Is there something wrong? What's gone wrong here? But providing I know there's an authenticity to the voice, provided I know that I'm not putting it on, that it's not an act, then I'm quite comfortable about that.
Richard, mid last year, you announced on air that Richard Quest, one of CNN's most recognizable faces and voices, that you are afraid of public speaking. Was there a particular incident, reason that sparked your fear?
No. What happens is, if I'm going to public speak, if I've got to give a speech, there's a huge difference between broadcasting to viewers where you can't see. Now, as I look at your viewers, I can't see you. I have no idea what you're doing. I don't even know if you're dressed or undressed. But the moment I've got an audience in front of me, I feel these knots. I'll start coughing. I'll have this, and it's a nervous cough. I don't need to clear anything up my throat. It's right here, it's a constriction. So I don't particularly enjoy speaking in front of an audience. Once I've started, that's different, because then you can feel the audience. So then you can feel whether they're with you or against you. You can feel if you're making them laugh or are they listening to what you're saying. I have the utmost respect for those people who have to give speeches, stand-up comedians, actors. Actors, it's slightly different because they've got a script to hide behind. But anybody who has to expose themselves in front of a live audience, I think it's an amazing occupation.
They say you should imagine your audience naked.
No,
Does that work?
This is absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
This is absolute rubbish. I've heard them all. I've heard, imagine your audience naked. I've heard, imagine that you're talking to your mother. Frankly, that's not going to work. My advice, certainly on television, is imagine you're telling a story at a dinner party. Now, why do I say that? Because if I'm just talking to you one-on-one, we become very conspiratorial, and we're not going to really get the necessary projection for a television interview. It's just not going to work. But if I imagine I'm telling a story at a dinner party, I've got to hit the person over there, I've got to hit you over there, so you get that right element of how to do it without going too far.
Richard, your mantra is business is not boring.
It's not.
And that reflects into your programs, in the way you deliver your content. Do you believe that business news get delivered more effectively with a bit of humor and entertainment in them?
Of course! Of course! I mean, for 30 years, I have fought against the mantra that business is boring. In newsrooms where I have worked, you editors' eyes glaze over. Your eyes glaze over. I can see them glazing now. Business, boring business. Numbers, stock markets, bonds, currencies. I know how to, but if I tell you how exciting it can be, whether it's the new iPad or iPhone, whether it's a new club that's in town that's opened, why is it being successful? Just whilst I've been here, Facebook has paid more than 16 billion US dollars for WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Now, do you use WhatsApp?
Yes.
You use WhatsApp?
Yep.
You use Facebook?
I use Facebook too.
$16 billion.
Yeah.
16 billion dollars for an app that you use to send messages to friends in other parts of the world because it's free.
Yeah.
Now that's business.
Yeah.
Business isn't boring men talking about stock markets and bonds. Business, why did you buy that shirt?
I like the color.
Did you look at any other color?
I did. This was the best color for me.
Right. Now you would simply say you made a fashion choice.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, you made a business choice. Because you took your hard-earned income and you decided what you were going to spend it on. You could have bought that in pink, it might have been in yellow, you probably had a look at the white one. But you chose the light duck egg blue, I think we'd probably call that. And that's a business decision.
At the World Economic Forum in Davos, you did something very interesting.
Oh.
Yes. You embarked on the selfie challenge. And of course, you tried to ask head of states and ministers to take a selfie with you.
Most did.
Most did.
Yeah, pretty much everybody did.
Okay.
There was only one person, I'm not going to tell you who it was, who didn't want me to show it.
What was the idea behind it, Richard?
Oh, it was because Davos can be as boring as ditch water sometimes. I mean, frankly, you've got to put some life into that thing. We all knew the Prime Minister and Obama at Mandela funeral, the famous selfie.
Yeah.
It just struck me. What would these people say if you asked them, can I have a selfie? Would they shy away from it? And remember, in many cases, I've met these people many times. So Tony Blair, I've met many times. Even for example, the prime ministers and presidents who once met. What would they say? And sure enough, they all did it. But here's the funny thing: when you do a selfie, it's as if suddenly everyone's performing. You get the thing, and this person who's been suddenly they light up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. And the reason I think they do it is because they're human beings like everybody else.
Yeah.
And they're used to having it done at home with their children and their parents. They're used to it.
Yeah.
The selfie challenge.
Yeah. Richard, you've interviewed so many prominent figures in the world, from the Dalai Lama to Queen Rania of Jordan to Playboy's founder, Hugh Hefner. What has been the most challenging interview you've done?
I think the most challenging interview, I could tritely sort of say, they're all challenging.
Okay.
The most challenging interview is what is it you want to get out of it? So with Hugh Hefner, you want to know what makes a beautiful woman to Hugh Hefner. To the Dalai Lama, you want to know how far can you push him before you're, what can you say to the Dalai Lama, this spiritual guru, spiritual leader? When you interviewed when I interviewed Margaret Thatcher, briefly, it's what are you going to say to the Iron Lady? So you have to determine very early on, before you even sit down with an interviewee, what is it that you want to get out of it?
Richard, what is your most memorable interview so far?
Oh, that is a very dangerous road to go down. Very dangerous. They're memorable for different reasons. They're memorable, I always say the Hugh Hefner one, because that was a case of a man who had really spent his life seemingly sleeping with beautiful women. So what did he make of that? Why did he do it? What was his concept of Patrick Swayze from Dirty Dancing, the famous late actor and dancer? I wasn't looking forward to that interview. I knew nothing about dancing. But I interviewed him and I heard his rationale for it. But then you've got great architects that I've interviewed. Zaha Hadid, who to look at her buildings, you'd think the woman must be barking mad. But you sit down and you listen to her philosophy about architecture, and suddenly that comes together. His Royal Highness Prince Andrew. Here is a man who has born to the Queen of England, who has lived his life as royalty, but he was the international trade ambassador. What did he make of what he had to do and how he did it? Here was a man who had no point of reference of everyday life that you and I would have from our lives. And you have to go and question him because you've got to find that common ground that will explain his position.
You've been doing this for, well, I read you started in 1985 at BBC as a news intern. And it's close to, maybe by next year, it's going to be your 30th year. Do you ever get jaded? Do you ever get tired?
Yes, of course I get tired. I get weary. I sometimes wish to shout and scream, usually at my own management. But you're probably the same. You usually think they're all a bunch of idiots who really couldn't pipe their way out of a plastic bag if they had to. No, you do get weary, you do get tired, but I don't get jaded. If I get jaded, it's because of the bureaucracy that I've got to deal with, or the technological problems that may have happened. But I never get jaded with the stories that I have to cover.